Hey guys, welcome back to the channel and Happy New Year! This week we're covering case number 5 in the serial killer files. It is focusing on this man, Juan Corona. Juan was found guilty of taking the lives of 25 migrant farm workers that he hired. So, without further ado, sit back, relax, and let's dive in. Juan Vallejo Corona was born in a rural population in the state of Jalisco, Mexico on February 7, 1934. He was one of 10 children to his parents Sebastian and Candida Corona. Juan's older 3 siblings were his half-siblings from his father's previous marriage, with the oldest being Natividad. By 1950, Juan had turned 16 and wasn't interested in pursuing an education, so he dropped out of school. He instead followed in Natividad's footsteps and immigrated to California, where he found work on farms in the Imperial and Sacramento valleys. For 3 months, Juan picked carrots and melons to make ends meet. Natividad invited Juan to move to the Marysville, Yuba City metropolitan area, and in May 1953, he accepted. Here, Juan met his first wife, Gabriela. The two married on October 24th at the behest of her parents. Sadly, the union would not last more than 3 months. In late December 1955, a flood in the Yuba and Feather Rivers broke a levee and flooded much of Sacramento Valley, including large sections of Yuba City and Marysville. Marysville was evacuated. This event would have a negative impact on Juan's mental health. The flood killed a total of 38 people, many of which were undocumented workers from Mexico. A lot of them were drafted in an effort to fix the levee. Juan, who had a chronic fear of water, suffered a mental breakdown. He believed everyone had died and he was seeing the ghost of the people who once lived in the city. On January 17, 1956, Natividad committed Juan to DeWitt State Mental Hospital in Auburn, California. During his time here, he was diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic. He received 23 shock treatments in a period of 3 months in order to cure him. He was declared recovered, and once released, he was deported back to Mexico. Juan returned back to America later that year. By 1959, Juan had found love again and married wife number 2, Gloria Marino. Together, the two had 4 daughters. Juan became known in the community for having a violent temper and was very public about his disdain for homosexuals, even though Natividad was openly gay. Regardless of those flaws, he was a trusted and hard worker. In 1962, Juan became a licensed labor contractor and began working for himself. He hired his own workers to staff local fruit ranches. The men hired were usually migrant workers from Mexico and the homeless. He also provided housing for many of the men who worked for him in a bunkhouse on Sullivan Ranch. According to most reports, it was less than adequate, though. Natividad owned the Guadalajara Cafe in Marysville, which Juan frequented. He often found his laborers just across the street from the establishment. Early on the morning of February 25, 1970, Jose Ramera Rea was at the Guadalajara Cafe when he went to the restroom. Jose was attacked during this time by an unknown assailant with a machete. He was discovered by a customer around 1 a.m. Natividad immediately phoned the police. Juan had been at the cafe during the time frame of the assault and considered a suspect. The attack appeared to occur after Jose rejected advances from Natividad. Following this, Jose filed a lawsuit against Natividad, winning the judgment of $250,000. Rather than paying, Natividad sold all of his properties and moved back to Mexico. Juan suffered a second schizophrenic episode and was briefly institutionalized in March 1970 at the same state hospital. Corona targeted male itinerant workers between the ages of 40 and 65, many of which were homeless. He would first club or non-fatally attack them with a machete in the face, mutilating every victim and leaving a cross carved into the back of their skulls. He would usually deliver the final blow to the chest, excluding one victim who was shot. Several of the victims were also found with their pants around their ankles. Although he denied any assaults, the body showed signs of this occurring. Not much is known about Corona's life in Mexico, but it is speculated his sadistic ways had started prior to his migration to America. Once the deed was done, the name and date of the murder would be written in a ledger he kept. The bodies were usually disposed on Sullivan Ranch. His motives remain a mystery, though. On May 19, 1971, farmer Goro Kagihiro found a large, freshly dug hole in the Sutter County peach orchard that he owned. Kagihiro asked employees, who had all been hired through Corona's connections, about the hole, which they knew nothing about. Kagihiro let it go until the next day. He returned to the orchard and, oddly, found the hole filled. The hole was far too large to be used for planting trees, so out of suspicion, he called the police. Police dug up the hole and found the body of a male drifter. This would just be one of many victims, revealing a 6-week-long spree that left 25 victims in Corona's wake. On May 24th, workers at an adjacent farm spotted another filled hole. This too was dug up by police and produced another male body. During this search, another hole was found which contained yet another body. All 3 men were drifters and farm workers who had all died from a similar wound to the chest. The investigation also produced some interesting evidence. In one of the graves, deputies found 2 meat receipts bearing Corona's signature, and in the other 2, there were 2 crumpled Bank of America deposit slips printed with Corona's name and address. Although circumstantial, these slips provided a boost in the case. Through witness testimonies, police also discovered that some of these victims were last seen riding in Corona's pickup truck. This became enough for police to secure a warrant against Corona. On the morning of May 26, 1971, police entered Corona's home with a warrant in hand and arrested him. Evidence seized included 2 blood-stained knives, a machete, a pistol, and blood-stained clothing. Probably the most important piece discovered was a blue ledger containing 34 names and dates, which included several known victims. Blood was also found in Corona's vehicle. As a result of the information found, police organized an aircraft to take infrared photos of the area in order to locate more graves. By June 4th, the search had concluded and the number of known victims were now up to 25. This was twice the body count of the Boston Strangler, who was up to that point the most prolific serial killer. 4 of Corona's victims remain unidentified despite family and police efforts. Corona was initially provided a public defender named Roy Van Den Heuvel. Heuvel hired several psychiatrists to evaluate Juan's mental state. However, on June 14th, Heuvel was replaced by Richard Hawk, who was a private attorney. Hawk agreed to pursue the case as long as he retained the exclusive literary and dramatic rights to Corona's story, including legal proceedings. Corona, under this agreement, waived the attorney-client privilege. Before reading records on Corona, Hawk decided to have him plead not guilty by reason of insanity and fired the psychiatrist. No mention was made of Corona's schizophrenia. The proceedings were delayed twice, once because Corona was hospitalized after suffering 2 consecutive heart attacks, and the latter due to the abolition of the death penalty in California. The trial began on September 11, 1972. Corona denied culpability. He was not called to the stand to testify, and no defense witnesses were called either. The jury deliberated for 45 hours, and on January 18, 1973, he was found guilty of first-degree murder on all 25 counts. He was sentenced to 25 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. However, through changes in the criminal legislation of California, Corona was granted a parole hearing after 7 years. Shortly after this, his wife divorced him. In 1978, Corona was granted a retrial through an appeal based on his previous counsel not performing legal and factual investigation. And secondly, the counsel obtaining publication rights as a fee created a conflict between the two parties. The second trial began on February 22, 1982. This new defense attributed the murders to Natividad Corona and not Juan. They claimed Natividad was a known homosexual who was prone to fits of rage, even citing the lawsuit from the patron of his cafe. Natividad had already passed some years prior to this second trial. 50 witnesses had been called during the retrial, including Juan himself. This trial lasted 7 months and resulted in the jury finding Corona guilty on all counts again. They dismissed his brother's involvement, arguing that the defense didn't prove Natividad was even in California at the time of most of the murders. He was sentenced to serve at Cochran State Prison. Shortly after this retrial, Corona was stabbed 30 times by another inmate, and this resulted in him losing all sight in his right eye. During his final parole hearing in November of 2016, Corona admitted to killing some of his victims before a California court for the first time, but he claimed they were all trespassers. Corona died on March 4, 2019, from natural causes at the age of 85. So, serial killer file number 5 comes to a close. This was another case I hadn't heard of prior to a viewer suggesting it, so thank you for your contribution. I really appreciate the ones I haven't heard of. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comments below. And also, if you enjoyed this, consider giving me a thumbs up. It lets YouTube know my content is interesting enough to keep you informed. And I say this every time, but if you're not subscribed, maybe you should think about doing it. Also, not sure how many of you use Instagram, but we're on there. I'll put it in the screen now and also in the description of this video. Until I get the community tab, I'm going to use this for announcements, and sometimes I run polls about the channel in which I would love to have your input on. The viewers make this channel happen, so I have to thank you guys for giving me a platform to share these stories and for allowing me to have a creative outlet. I can't thank this wonderful group of people who all share an interest in the macabre enough. You guys are the best, and as always, I'll see you in the next one. Bye, friends!